Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to our conversation today with European Commission Vice President Dubravka Šuica. Welcome, Vice President, Madam Vice President. Welcome. You are in Dubrovnik. I'm here in Brussels. You were planning to come back to Brussels, but then, of course, COVID-19 interfered, and then there was this tragic earthquake also in Croatia on the 22nd of March. And you are going tomorrow to Zagreb to take part in the EU Balkans Summit, Western Balkans Summit, and of course there's a meeting of the College of Commissioners as well, so you really have to leave at 7 o'clock. You'll be driving yourself, and you'll be driving for some long hours. Now, one of the interesting things when we do these conversations with high-profile policymakers is that we get to see the person behind the public persona. And Vice President, as I was rereading and rediscovering your very impressive CV, seeing what you've done so far, it really is impressive. You started off your professional career as a teacher, English and German, and then of course you became the first female mayor of Dubrovnik. You were given the Mayor's Award in 2009, and of course you've been a member of the European Parliament as well. And throughout your career, what is really quite inspiring is that you've focused on people. You've had gender issues high up on your agenda, women's empowerment, you've had the fight against cancer, and you've also paid a great deal of attention to children and children's rights. So that's something that we really need to focus on here today as well. Now, on Saturday, it will be Europe Day, 9th of May, and of course there was going to be, I guess, a big conference on the future of Europe. We were all waiting for that. This was going to go on for 2 years and have consultations with citizens, talking to people about different ideas about the future of our Europe. But of course, COVID-19 has upended all that strategy. We'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk about how you're changing the format and maybe changing also the content of this conference on the future of Europe. But first of all, I really want to give you the floor to talk about something else that is very close to your heart. Now, we talk a lot about the COVID-19 impact on health. We talk a lot about the politics of COVID-19, and we talk about the economic devastation that has been caused by COVID-19. But lost in all this noise is often the societal impact of COVID-19. How is it impacting on our societies, on solidarity systems, on systems of support, networks, inclusion? So without further ado, I would like to give you the floor, Vice President. You will speak, and I will have a conversation with you for about 30 minutes, and then we have many people coming in on Zoom and also through Twitter. On Zoom, we will have these questions coming in later, but first, Vice President, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to everybody, and dear Mrs. Islam, dear colleagues, dear participants. I want to thank you for inviting me today to this virtual debate on a topic of vital importance, the present and the future of European democracy. I'm delighted to join you today. In recent times, we can observe that some people have been feeling left behind by society's progress. Many of these citizens feel forgotten, and essentially they blame our democratic system for this, or at least its institutions. Yet I remain firmly of the belief that, especially in times of crisis, the importance of democracy and its undeniable relevance in our daily lives must be emphasized time and again. An example of this is the current crisis we are all living through. The coronavirus does not recognize borders or institutions. It does not play by any mutually agreed rules. My thoughts are with those who have fallen victim to this vicious disease, and I offer my heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of those who have died. The coronavirus pandemic has reached deeply into our society and affected it in unprecedented
We're having a bit of a technical issue. I think perhaps it's the Vice President's internet connection. We will go back to her very quickly. We will go back to her very quickly. Vice President, can you reboot perhaps? Perhaps you can reboot your internet, your iPad. These things happen. So technology is a fantastic thing, isn't it? It brings us together even in moments of difficulty and separation, geographical distances, Dubrovnik, Brussels, and many other capitals. But we are relying more and more, of course, we can't meet. Ah, there you are, back. Welcome back. We missed you.
My internet is very powerful.
No, but thank you for being here. You were talking about demography and how it was impacting, COVID-19 was impacting on our societies. Please, floor's yours.
I said that we have to think about elderly, about people, you know, who are more isolated and lonelier than ever before, and the subsequent impact on their health. You must have heard German Chancellor Angela Merkel in a recent speech in the Bundestag she highlighted the plight of those aged 80 and over during the crisis and reminded us that we fight the virus also for them, just as they fought to build the Europe we live in today. The crisis demonstrates the need for an effective approach towards demographic change. We must look into the needs of our aging society. Loneliness, more than ever before, needs to be addressed as a substantial part of our health, social, and economic policies. In addition, we can look at building solidarity not just at the European level, but also between generations. Remember that by disproportionately losing our elderly to this virus, we also lose a part of our precious living wisdom and history. Children are also vulnerable during this crisis, with daily school routines disrupted and some more exposed to domestic violence and abuse. We need to strengthen our child protection systems and support member states to ensure all children grow up with equal chances. Solidarity must be the leitmotif of our times. I have been struck by some of the simple but so significant gestures of community spirit. The applause for health workers at 8 p.m. in some countries, the group singing from windows and balconies, young people doing the shopping for their elderly neighbors and reaching out to the lonely people. These acts give me hope that in adversity, the better side of human nature can also emerge. I'm also thinking with great humility and respect of our courageous citizens in the healthcare sector who work relentlessly to save lives. My thoughts are also with the police, delivery workers, IT technicians, logistic operatives, supermarket staff, and all others providing much needed service under such difficult conditions. These are the real life heroes we must recognize during these often surreal times. Despite a slow start, we see the real Europe standing up, the one where we are there for each other when it is needed the most. We have all seen the images of sick patients arriving in other European countries by train and helicopter, and of supplies being delivered to the countries most affected. This is Europe in action. As some examples among many, Germany has taken patients from northern Italy and from France. In turn, France has sent 1 million face masks and 20,000 protective suits to Italy, while Germany has donated 7 tons of protective equipment. Czechia has offered 10,000 protective suits to Italy and another 10,000 to Spain. Meanwhile, a team of European doctors and nurses from Romania and Norway deployed through the European Civil Protection Mechanism was dispatched to Milan and Bergamo to help Italian medical staff. We need to acknowledge our shortcomings in this crisis, and it is all too clear that a coordinated response and the close alignment of our efforts can be the only solution to European and global issues. We also urge member states to continue to work together and especially to support the countries worst affected. Solidarity is not charity. It is in everyone's interest. No single country can beat this alone. We sink or swim together. Yesterday's successful global pledging conference led by the European Union and our President Ursula von der Leyen exemplified the importance to join forces and mobilize resources to develop as soon as possible a vaccine, produce it, and deploy it to every single corner of the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice President. Indeed, you've really highlighted issues that we don't really talk about enough: the loneliness, the vulnerable people, the intergenerational problems that come as well, and also for highlighting that there has been solidarity within the European Union. People have come out and helped each other. We are nations working together. But you know as well as I do that the stories in the newspapers and the media have been full of ways in which the EU has actually not shown, initially at least, the solidarity that we hoped for. We have Schengen now eroded to a large extent. The single market has been in danger as well. So just tell us a little bit about how your office and yourself, how are you reacting to these criticisms? What are you doing in response to all the citizens' concerns that have come your way?
If I may say, no one was really ready for this. I'm not hiding the fact that the initial reaction of European Union and its member states had its flaws. Too many were not there on time when Italy needed a helping hand at the very beginning. And as President von der Leyen has said, it is right that Europe as a whole offers a heartfelt apology. But Europe has now become the world's beating heart of solidarity. On the other hand, European Union has been on the front lines of the fight against coronavirus since January. While others were downplaying the threat, we invested 10 million euros in research and have since constantly expanded our financing, which is now around 380 million euros. We acted as fast as we could to mitigate the impact of the virus in Europe by proposing EU budget flexibility, which freed 37 billion euros, and the relaxation of fiscal measures, which created the possibility for member states to inject 430 billion euros into the economy. We also provided 2.7 billion of budgetary funds for boosting our healthcare system, and an additional 380 million euros allocated to the RescEU Joint Procurement Fund for medical equipment. In the spirit of solidarity, we established a 100 billion euros temporary financial instrument for the protection of employment, the SURE mechanism. On top of that, the European Investment Bank is planning to support European SMEs with a scheme that could generate 200 million euros, while the European Investment Fund is mobilizing a total of 8 billion euros to assist at least 100,000 companies. And moreover, we must not forget the pandemic crisis support instrument the Eurogroup agreed. Here we are talking about €500 billion to confront the immediate socio-economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic. In total, the European Union and its member states have mobilized almost 3.4 trillion euros to save jobs and businesses. The biggest response to the world, almost the size of Germany's GDP. So the response was not only fiscal or financial. European countries are working together on repatriation of its citizens stranded outside the European Union. We can see a systematic medical cooperation and the pan-European research and development effort related to COVID-19. So we did a lot, as I said at the beginning. Maybe we were a little bit slow, but it doesn't mean that European Union wasn't reacting, that we are reacting at this moment, as you might see.
So as you've said, Vice President, shaky and perhaps a slow start, but now many initiatives out there to try and gain ground to make up for the little slow start at the beginning. You are Vice President for Democracy and Demography, and in a sense also, because these two values, these two elements are so important for us, also in a sense responsible for Europe's destiny. So let me come back to the conference on the future of Europe. And of course, as I said, and you have said, it's changed, it's upended. You cannot do what you were planning to do. It was going to be a huge celebration of different kinds, different consultations. So how are you adapting both the content of the conference and also, of course, the formats as we go into this, as we remain in a COVID-19 world?
First of all, we have to bear in mind that citizens have been asking for greater participation in policy making, and we need to listen to this call. I have to mention participative and deliberative democracy and its tools, that they can help to reinforce democracy in the European Union. An additional tool at our disposal is the Conference on the Future of Europe. I'm in charge of this on behalf of Commission. The conference can mark the beginning of the process towards reinvigorating democracy in Europe, a new way of collectively shaping decisions and policies that affects us all. If I may quote Jean Monnet, he said, "Only the people can change and enrich things in the institutions and transmit them to future generations." This coronavirus crisis is showing that our collective destinies are shaped by the individual decisions of each and every one of us. European citizens must step up to this challenge. European institutions must listen and offer protection, support, and direction. Now, more than ever, politics must go beyond its comfort zone of business as usual and accept the need for adjustment. Right now, we need to manage the present. Of course, present is very important, which will also inform how we will shape our common future. And I'm sure that the conference will be adapted. As you know, we adopted a communication on shaping the Conference of the Future of Europe in January. At that time, the Union was in its 7th consecutive year of growth and forecast. Today, with millions of citizens still confined and the global recession looming, the perspective has radically changed, but our determination to engage with citizens and ensure their voice is heard in Europe has not changed. The Conference of the Future of Europe remains crucial. European citizens should have a greater say on what the Union does and how it works for them. So we want the conference to be an open, inclusive, transparent, and structured debate so that European citizens can get more involved in democracy beyond the European elections, not only once in 5 years. When it comes to the content, the principle stated in the communication is still valid, regardless of this health crisis. The conference should allow citizens to focus on what they consider to be important. The headline ambitions as set out in Commission's political priorities and European Council strategic agenda, they provide a broad framework, but I'm sure that, for instance, subjects such as healthcare and Brussels' response to the public health crisis will now have a more prominent role in dialogues among citizens. This is how I see it. But let's see what will the citizens say. The conference is a joint endeavor, you have to know this, of the European Parliament, European Council, and the Commission. So the details of the format, including the scope and structure, need to be agreed jointly. As you know, the Council, unfortunately, has not agreed on a position yet, but we hope to be able to start working soon. Despite these circumstances, we aim to launch the Conference on the Future of Europe as soon as possible. As you know, we had planned to launch the conference on Europe's Day, as you said, with a symbolic event in Dubrovnik and events all over Europe, but this is, of course, not possible anymore. The healthiest and safest option for our citizens is to bring the debates online for the time needed to get the virus under control. We are already working on advanced digital tools that can live up to the challenge. So we are working on a multilingual digital platform, and I hope this will be ready soon.
Right. So a decision needs to be taken still, but you are obviously changing the format, bringing it into the online era, and also, Vice President, very important that healthcare, health systems will be in the front, in the lead when we talk about these different issues related to Europe. Thank you very much indeed. There will be questions about that, I'm sure, from our audience, but let me just continue with another issue that's very dear to the heart of Friends of Europe, actually. It is about inclusion and about how we live in multicultural, diverse societies. How will you ensure, Vice President, that the Conference on the Future of Europe brings the voices of Europe's minorities into the discussion?
If I may continue on the conference, so you will see the Commission is committed to follow up what was agreed by the conference, and President von der Leyen has been very clear on this, and I want to be clear as well. The conference can be a success only if all citizens can see the concrete impact of debates on EU policy making. While the details of feedback mechanism will be agreed with European Parliament and the Council, we already started consulting experts all over Europe and analyzing successful experiences. For example, Grand Débat in France, then there is the Irish Citizens Assembly, or Bürgerrat in Eupen in Belgium. So prior to the outbreak of this coronavirus, I had planned to visit 27 member states during the first 6 months of my mandate, but by early March, I had visited 10. Mm-hmm. So I was well on my way, but of course, COVID-19 changed all of that. In my exchanges, I focused on national and regional examples of participatory democracy, as we need to get the feedback mechanism right. This is key for the conference on the future of Europe. We need to make sure that a brilliant idea, mm-hmm. for example, voiced in a local discussion, can be discussed at the European level and brought to the attention of the institutions. This is how.
So we're having, yes.
It should work. Of course, we also work. Okay. I wanted to tell you that we are working on key principles to structure debates and citizens' contributions in a meaningful way. Every voice must count, so the conference must be representative of geography. I'm trying to answer a question of geography, of gender, of age, socioeconomic background, and or level of education of citizens. So everyone and anyone should and must count.
And Vice President, so they're not just believers in Europe in our midst. We also have Eurosceptics. We have people who are very critical of the European Union, sometimes wrongly, sometimes rightly. Their voices, how are you going to include their voices in this online consultation discussions on the future of our Europe?
As I said, we are open to all people in Europe. We want to reach out to citizens from all walks of life and from all corners of Europe. Especially the silent majority of those who have little or no occasion of engaging with the European Union. But I know that criticism will be part of the process, as you said, and it must be accepted, provided that it is based on facts and on real discussions. If we want a constructive dialogue, it is important that our citizens can access reliable and updated information. We see every day that misinformation and disinformation are thriving. The COVID-19 outbreak has aggravated this trend. So, as I said, we will try by this multilingual platform to ensure full transparency, and we will provide fact-based information so that citizens can contribute effectively to managing the present and shaping the future of Europe. So we will try to defend ourselves if they will be too critical by offering them facts and arguments.
Right, thank you very much for that. Now, coming to the opening, your opening statement made some very insightful remarks about the elderly, and Europe is an aging continent, and as we know, you also talked about children, vulnerable people, isolation, loneliness. How is the Commission rising to those concerns of citizens, those very real concerns in today's coronavirus world? The daily trials, if you like, of the elderly, of the children.
Yeah, if you remember, in my mission letter, I have also been entrusted with the preparation of comprehensive strategy on the rights of the child and the coordination of the child guarantee. So an instrument that will help lift children at risk out of poverty and social exclusion. So on both, I cooperate with my colleague Commissioner Didier Reinders and Nicola Schmidt. So this will be very important regarding children, and especially we have to include actions to protect vulnerable children, protect their rights online, foster child-friendly justice, and prevent and fight violence. This is what we will definitely do for our children, because we think that also COVID-19 crisis does not leave children unharmed. While showing milder symptoms, they can also be infected. More importantly, the closure of kindergartens, schools, and recreation centers disrupt their daily routine. While many can follow their curriculum through homeschooling, not all have the resources easily available, and not all can count on the support of their parents and risk falling behind on their education. So we also need to take these realities of isolation during the corona crisis into consideration. As we take our work on children's rights forward, we need to ensure that children grow up in an enabling and safe environments. Regarding elderly people, we are especially focused on elderly people because it's also part of my portfolio, but now they are really struck, and as you know, they are victims of this COVID-19 crisis. So we are now trying to combine a combination of the facts that we as societies are aging a lot, and that elderly are among those most at risk at disease.
Right.
So there are the questions that emerge, and they are rather related to the policy responses we choose because of our demographic structure. We have to take this into consideration. So there are questions like, how do we prepare our healthcare systems for the future? How do we ensure quality long-term care? Which effects has this on shrinking working age population and effectively the economy as a whole? What will the long-term effects of isolation, anxiety, and loneliness be on our society and economy?
Right.
So we are only at the very beginning of this process. In fact, in the middle of the crisis. I would like to be at the end of the crisis, but I think that we are in the middle of the crisis, and hence we are learning every day. So we have already taken significant measures in response to this crisis, as I mentioned earlier,
Right.
but more will certainly...
Right. Watch this space, as you say, and you're absolutely right to focus on children as well. All over Europe, the number of children who are calling helplines because of domestic abuse is on the rise. There's domestic violence against women, and of course the plight of the elderly that you've brought forward. And rightly so, Vice President, you've said you have to be in firefighting mode in the midst of an urgent emergency, but also thinking ahead of the problems, the aftermath of COVID-19 traumas, if you like. So my final question to you before I turn to our Zoom audience and to those who will be joining us on Twitter, my final question to you really has to do with female leadership. Now, there have been a lot of articles and lots of reports saying the best leaders during this crisis have been women. They have been compassionate, empathetic, and they have been responsive and efficient, more so than perhaps male leaders. Is it feminine leadership, or is it that men and women leaders should also all be compassionate and empathetic? So what is your experience, Vice President?
First of all, I have to mention our President von der Leyen, who is a woman and who wanted the gender equal commission. We almost reached our goal. We are 12 to 14 or something like that. I have been always fighting for women's rights. I was a member of PAM committee when I was in European Parliament, always fighting against domestic violence. I was also on forefront for ratification of Istanbul Convention. For me, it was very important to have equal participation of women in politics. And as you mentioned, I was the first female mayor of my hometown, Dubrovnik. And I was always trying to somehow promote this gender equality, which I think without this equality, the world wouldn't be just as it should be. So I think nowadays we have a very good opportunity with Ursula von der Leyen, with Angela Merkel, with Margareta Vestager, with many
There are
others.
many. There are many names. Exactly. Many names in Europe, but also many names across the world, actually, as we know. Now, I'm going to turn to our Zoom audience, and I'll go to Debating Europe in a second, but I need to give instructions to all of you who are on our Zoom platform. So you want to ask a question, select the raise hand button to come in with your intervention. Also, please put the camera on and unmute your microphone as well. And for people watching us on live stream, Twitter, please, hashtag FOE debate, and we will take your questions as well. Now it's my turn to Debating Europe, and let's come in now with Joe Litobarski. Joe, you have some questions from our citizens platform. Please pose them now to the Vice President.
Yes, that's right. Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Joe Litobarski. I'm the editor of Friends of Europe's citizen debate platform, debatingeurope.eu. We had a question sent in from Ivan on the platform, who points to the European Citizens Initiative as an earlier example of participatory democracy at the EU level. And he points out that it's only seen 4 initiatives successfully submitted to the Commission in 8 years, none of which have been adopted into law. So the question is, would you judge the ECI to have been a success? What lessons have been learned, and how will the Conference on the Future of Europe be different?
Vice President, please.
Thank you for these questions. Dear Ivan. I want to tell that European Citizens Initiative is an essential instrument for democracy in the European Union. It is the first transnational instrument of participatory democracy, which allows European citizens to directly shape the EU policy agenda. And all citizens' initiatives, currently we have 97 registration requests and 72 registered initiatives, and they are discussed at the highest political level. If we want to, I want to tell you, 2 weeks ago, we were discussing one of the initiatives during our weekly college meeting. This is the clearest and the indicator of our strong commitment to the European Citizens Initiative. May I remind, the European Citizens Initiative, at that time I was in Parliament, but may I remind you, right to water is an example that the approach works. In December 2019, a provisional agreement was reached by European Parliament and the Council on the recast Drinking Water Directive. The agreement is based on the proposal adopted by the Commission in February 2018, and as a direct follow-up to the Right to Water European Citizens Initiative, it aims to improve the quality of drinking water and access to it, as well as provide better information to citizens. Of course, I have to admit, there are limits to what the Commission can propose legislation on, as indicated in our regulations on the European Citizens Initiative. If the Commission decides not to take action on an initiative, it has to clearly explain the reasons why. Mm-hmm. Of course, all instruments can be improved. That is why in January, European Commission has revamped the European Citizens Initiative and launched a new platform. The objective is to enhance the possibility it offers for European citizens to design their own initiatives and engage with others in order to have a real impact on the agenda setting in the European Union, at the European Union level. So Ivan asks a very good question, and I think we are enhancing European democracy by using this European initiative, by this European Citizens Initiative.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice President. Joe, you have a second question from Debating Europe. Go ahead, please.
Yes, that's correct. So I have a question from Leendert, who's worried that the Conference on the Future of Europe is a way for the EU to increase its competencies and its powers, irrespective of what citizens want. So Linda points to the fact that Guy Verhofstadt, who is, says he's a well-known federalist, is being considered to chair the conference. What would you say to citizens who share Linda's concerns?
If I may say, dear Linda, in the view, the conference should give European citizens a greater say, as I said, on what the Union does and how it works for them. It should allow for an open, inclusive, transparent and structured debate, as I said, on the topic the citizens consider important, this is very important, and make it easier for Europeans to get involved in democracy beyond the European elections. As I said, once again, not once in 5 years, but we have to be in constant dialogue. I think that no limit should be established from the outset on what to expect as an outcome. So we have to make sure that the debates with citizens produce concrete and effective proposals for the European institutions, while of course also managing expectations. But we need to make sure that the brilliant idea, as I said, voiced in a local discussion, can come to the European level and can draw to the attention of the institutions. These are the principles, and we don't want to preempt the outcome of the conference. This is very, very important. Of course, the scope, formal structure, and objectives of the conference will be defined jointly, once again, by European Parliament, Council, and European Commission, acting as equal partners. At this moment, we are waiting. At this stage, only Parliament and Commission have published their starting positions. You know that there is a resolution of European Parliament. There is communication from European Commission. But at this moment, we are looking forward to the Council's standpoint. So we need to wait for the Council. So I don't want to comment on Guy Verhofstadt, but he is member of European Parliament, and let's see what the Parliament will decide on this.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, indeed. Let's not get too personal at this stage. We're still waiting for the conference and decisions from the Council, as you said, to materialize. Now, let's go to the Zoom audience. And as I said, please, there is a raise your hand, and we already have several people coming in. So let me give the floor to Carolee Hendricks. She's a European Young Leader, Friends of Europe's European Young Leader, and she's from Estonia. Carolee, please do come in. There you go.
So you already did half of my introduction. Thank you. So yes, Carolee, CEO and co-founder of Jobadico from Tallinn. And I have a question, or let's first start, Mrs. Vice President. I must say, listening to the discussion here, that it is a bit alarming that we are mainly discussing a conference when a little more than a month ago, a parliament of an EU member state granted the government emergency powers that are unprecedented since the fall of communism 30 years ago. And I must say that this comparison is very important for me because I was actually born behind the Iron Curtain in a country occupied by Soviet Union. And we know that now Prime Minister Viktor Orban can rule by decree, and journalists can face up to 5 years in prison if they are deemed to spreading fake news. At the same time, 2 weeks later, we see that European Commission approves approximately €1 billion scheme to support Hungarian economy in the context of coronavirus outbreak. So, and we see the similar things happening in Poland. I have 3 questions.
So you'll have to be, Carolee, just be very, very precise, very quickly,
okay.
Please.
I have 3 questions concerning that. First of all, what is Commission's plan to address the fact that EU continues funding a dictatorship? Also, what has to happen for European Commission to trigger Article 7? And the third question is more personally to you. What have you done as the Vice President for Democracy of the European Commission in the past month to address this situation? So 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolee. Vice President, please.
Thank you very much for your interest and for your questions. One of these member states I mentioned out of 10, it was Estonia, and I was in Tallinn. Was my first visit on my listening tour to European Union member states. So, and then we went from Tallinn, we went to Tartu to have citizens dialogue. But regarding your question, first of all, the rule of law is one of the fundamental principles and values upon which the European Union is founded, and I have to repeat it once again. So it is enshrined such in Article 2 of the Treaty of European Union, and rule of law is also essential for the functioning of the European Union as a whole. For example, internal market, cooperation in the area of justice, freedom, security, and so on. I don't want to preach on this, but you know what I'm talking about. The Commission is closely following such developments in all member states concerned, and President von der Leyen issued a statement on the matter last week. She has made it very clear emergency measures cannot come at the expense of our fundamental principles and values as set out in the treaties. Such measures must be limited to what is necessary, strictly proportionate, and must not last indefinitely. Moreover, governments must make sure that such measures are subject to regular scrutiny. When I say scrutiny, that it means I mean Parliament scrutiny. With regard to the recently adopted emergency law in Hungary, the Commission will, based on these principles I mentioned, analyze the final law and closely monitor its application by the government. This includes the application of provisions criminalizing fake news. In these challenging times, legal certainty and freedom of expression must be guaranteed. In times of a crisis, it is more important than ever that journalists can do their job freely. As President von der Leyen said, democracy cannot work without free and independent media. As you know, last week, the European Commission launched an infringement procedure by sending a letter of formal notice to Poland regarding the new law of the judiciary of 20 December 2019. The new law on the judiciary undermines the judicial independence of Polish judges and is incompatible with the primacy of European Union law. Regarding Hungary, once again, I said what is the position of Commission and what is the position of Ursula von der Leyen, our President. But if I may remind you, I am in charge of democracy and demography, but this part, rule of law, is in charge, for this part is in the lead, my dear colleague, Vice President Vera Jourova.
Thank you very much indeed, Vice President, as well. Let me now go to Anila Noor. Anila is from the Migrant Women Connectors Network that we work very closely with as well. Anila, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Shada, first of all, arranging this, and thank you so much, Vice President. It's really impressive the way you are discussing that COVID-19 do not have any gender lens and do not have any, do not have any discrimination lens. So in this regard, I was just going through your profile, and it's so impressive the work you did in the integration for the local level and the regional level. I just trying to understand, we are talking about democracy, how you think we can present the voices of refugee and migrant who are living in Europe, who are part of Europe, how we make sure these all planning of future of Europe, their voices will be there, because already those communities are not feeling linked in the policy debate. There's a huge gap of understanding, and how we make easy understanding for their perspective, their lived experience, and their realities should be reflected in the policy debate, and how you think we can make more connection towards their realities, their understanding, and to the policy debates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anila. Vice President, please.
Thank you for this question. As I said, the Conference on the Future of Europe will be not biased. So regardless, as I said, regardless of gender, race, age, geography, whatever, and of course this applies to refugees and migrants too. We were just about to adopt a new asylum policy, but COVID-19 protected us from doing this, but we are in the procedure. It's under the auspices of my dear colleague Ylva Johansson, and I'm sure that we will come up with new asylum policy. But regarding Conference on the Future of Europe, everyone will be free to come on board and There is no doubt on this. So be rest assured that refugees and migrants will have a part in the conference too.
Thank you for that reassurance, Vice President. I think a number of people watching and online are really interested in that issue, and so we are grateful for that reassurance, because Europe is multicultural, very diverse, and sometimes we do have the impressions that it is Brussels so white. So we really need the voices of our minorities, our migrants, our refugees into the conversation as well. Thank you very much indeed. Let me turn to Amanda now. Amanda Rodi is my colleague working at Friends of Europe, and she's been monitoring Twitter to see if the questions coming in. Amanda, what do you have?
Hi, thank you, Shara. Hi, Vice President. I have received on Twitter a question from someone going by Erasmus. This person asks, do you agree that the hallmark of the EU lies in its dual democracy, meaning a system of governance according to which both the member states and the Union must comply with stringent demands of democracy and the rule of law?
Vice President.
Regarding Erasmus, I'm sure that it is one of the most important projects ever in European Union. You know that having Erasmus, people from East and West, South and North of Europe connect, and they exchange their views, they exchange their knowledges, they exchange their friendships. So I'm sure that there is no dual democracy. I'm sure that each and everyone has to be treated equally.
Right, thank you very much. Amanda, there's another question coming in. And if I could just say to the people on Zoom, if you do have a question, please put up your virtual hand, or you can also send a chat message to my colleague Natalie Führer, who is monitoring those chat messages. So Amanda, the second question from Twitter, please.
Yes. So I've also received a question about one of the areas of your portfolio. So part of your portfolio is about better reconciling work and family and supporting people throughout their careers. And the pandemic has hugely affected how people work and raised new questions about balancing work and family. So how do you think this part of your work will evolve in this post-COVID world?
Thank you for this question. This is a very important part of my portfolio. As I mentioned, from childhood, from child guarantee, through work and life balance to elderly. So whole cycle of life is within my portfolio. And this has to do with the the pillar of social rights, which was adopted, and with these 20 principles. Work and life balance is very, very important. And I'm sure that it will come into the heart of our policies nowadays after this COVID-19 crisis, because social policy alongside with climate change and the European Green Deal, and alongside with digitalization, social Europe will be one of the most important policies. So I'm sure that we have to offer to families better nursery schools, kindergartens, and all different cares in order to keep their working places, and in order to keep their families together. So it is one of the most important parts of our European policies. But you have to know, as I said at the beginning during my introductory statement, that many of these policies are within the scope of member states' competence. So our recommendations are very good, and funding and cohesion policy comes here. So everything, if the member states follow our recommendations, I'm sure that work and life balance can be also reached.
So two questions, Vice President. One which is outside your portfolio. It's about the Western Balkans, but you're Croatian. You're in Croatia. You'll be attending the summit tomorrow. This was supposed to be a big breakthrough summit in terms of opening even wider, if you like, the doors to the Western Balkans countries that are seeking to join the European Union. Do you have a message that you will be conveying to our Western Balkans partners tomorrow?
Thank you for this question. I'm always interested in this topic, and you know, in my previous position, I was vice chair of Foreign Affairs Committee, AFET, European Parliament, and I was dealing with Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo, and I'm really interested in this part of the world. So for tomorrow, I think, unfortunately, this summit will be only video conference. It was envisaged to be the crown of the Croatian presidency, because 20 years ago, in 2000, year 2000, there was a Grand Zagreb summit when it was decided to enlarge Europe. And then after that, there were two cycles of enlargement. First in 2000, first 10 countries, then later on Bulgaria and Romania, and then 2013 Croatia joined the Union. Now, during this presidency, it was very important that North Macedonia and Albania got a candidate status, and it is a very, very good sign to the countries of the Western Balkans. But always, I have to always repeat again that it will be tailor-made approach. They have to fulfill their criteria. These criteria are very important. First, freedom of media, freedom of expression, rule of law, and all these other criteria. But it is a very, very good sign, which will be sent in the declaration tomorrow in Zagreb, because out of security reasons and also economic reasons, we have to show a good sign to these countries, and we don't want to have a black hole within European Union. And for us, for European Union, and for Croatia itself, although I'm not now talking on behalf of Croatia, it is very important to have this Western Balkans neighborhood together with us. Because you have to know that there are many different actors on the scene nowadays, not to mention Russia, Turkey, and some other countries which would like to have influence in this part of the world. But we think that this is Europe, this is heart of Europe, and if they of course fulfill criteria, they should be part of European Union.
You're so right. I mean, it is a geopolitical chessboard in the Western Balkans at the moment. Many countries vying, struggling for supremacy, influence, increasing their role, their finance. So the European Union has to remain a very strong partner and keep its doors open for full membership of these nations. Thank you very much. Question also now from Hiab Johannes. Hiab, please come in. Keep your question short if you can, because we're running close to the deadline. Please, come on in. You have to unmute and have your camera on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity for this discussion. My question is basically about the news that are coming from the Mediterranean shores of Europe, deportation of refugees and returning them back to prisons in Libya. And that has been happening for a long time. I guess now I am a refugee here who lives in the UK, and as someone who has some connections, I keep hearing those stories as well from the refugees themselves. And what is Europe doing in addressing those issues? It would be really good to have those kind of initiatives that Europe is doing, and that refugees are not understanding those things. I wanted to listen what's happening.
Thank you.
Because that
Thank you very much, Hiab. Thank you for that question. So, Vice President, as you can see, a lot of concern from our minorities, refugees, migrants, about whether their voice counts and what is being done to not become Fortress Europe.
Of course, we don't want to be Fortress Europe, as you know, but this is a very complex question, and it's under the scope of my dear colleague, High Representative Joseph Borrell. And we are doing a lot in Libya, but I don't want to interfere in this part because it's not my portfolio, although I have my personal opinion on this. But of course, we are doing our best in order to keep the situation under control. And regarding minorities and regarding my portfolio, everyone should be listened. Everyone should be part of the Conference on the Future of Europe. and this has also to do with my with part of my portfolio, which is demography. So I hope we can talk about this Mediterranean situation and this neighborhood during our next Friends of Europe chat or conversation.
Yes, and we will get you back. Now, there's a final question. I know you're in a rush. You have to drive 5 or 6 hours, but just please, a final question from a European young leader from Malta, Matthew Caruana. Matthew, please. Unmute and please put the camera on.
Hi, sorry, I wasn't aware that I had to start the video. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you to the Vice President for joining this call. I run a foundation in Malta that's dedicated to press freedom. It's called the Daphne Caruana Galizia, named after my mom. And one of the causes that we advocate for is better protections for journalists who are being sued for their investigations, defamation suits, libel suits, attempts to take their stories down. And one of the most extreme cases that we're dealing with is, in fact, from your home country, Croatia, where currently around 1,000 journalists are being sued for stories that they've published, investigations into corruption into Croatia. And I'm wondering whether your office is aware of the situation with respect to these lawsuits that are called strategic lawsuits against public participation, SLAPs, and whether you are working on the issue at all.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much indeed. Vice President, please.
I wasn't aware of this number you mentioned regarding my home country, but regarding freedom, as I said, I'm always opting for freedom of expression, freedom of media, and I'm sure that this issue can be approached from my colleague Vera Jourova and from my colleague Didier Reinders. But I think if you ask me about Croatia, I will tell you it's a free democratic country, and I'm sure the judiciary system is correct and fair. So, but I know that for the case in Malta, which was unprecedented, and I'm really, I feel really sympathy, and I feel empathy for the situation and for what happened not only in Malta but also in Slovakia, which is not nobody can say that this was correct. This was unprecedented, as I told you. But regarding Croatia, I cannot answer because I don't know that this is the case. But if there are lawsuits. As I said, judiciary is free and democratic, and it's only one branch of democracy out of 3 in each and every country. So let me see what maybe I can see in maybe I can see in detail what's going on if you can. Send me an email and I can see. But again, Vera Jourova and Didier Reinders are in charge of this. But we are, as I may reiterate, we are fighting fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. And this is what all of us have to fight if we want to be democratic society.
Absolutely right. Vice President, we're coming to the end of our conversation with you. Press World Freedom Day was on Sunday, the 4th of May, and yesterday we had a very interesting conversation, an online discussion on misinformation and the impact, the negative impact those fake stories about health remedies, bogus advice are having on the health of Europeans and actually across the world. So that's a very important question. That's why these conversations are interesting, as you can see, Vice President. That's why you should come more often. We look forward to seeing you again. You get questions from all over Europe, in fact, all over the world, and you get questions on issues that are of real concerns to Europeans that matter to everyone, you know, of every color, race, and creed. These are the issues that are important. So we really engage with our citizens through various platforms, including European Young Leaders and Debating Europe, etc. So I encourage every member of the European Commission to come and have a conversation with us, to take into account all the different interests and concerns of our many Europeans. Now, having said that, let me say that we do have events coming up where there will be just such conversations. We have What the Chiefs Say with Maria Martin-Pratt on the 6th of May, tomorrow. We have a conversation with Commissioner Maria Gabriel on the 7th of May, and a conversation with Commissioner Didier Reinders on the 12th of May. And then I'll have a strategic conversation with Emily O'Reilly, the European Ombudsman, on the 13th of May. So you can see that our concerns are really related to how citizens are feeling about Europe today in this COVID-19 moment, traumas that we feel, and that you, Vice President, so kindly highlighted and so inspiringly talked about, things that we don't really discuss. We're all talking about the economics of it, we're talking about the geopolitical implications of COVID-19, but you brought to the front line, the heroes, as you said, among us in this COVID-19 crisis. So once again, let me thank you. I wish you a safe journey, be careful, and to everyone else here as well, I'd like to say thank you very much for dialing in, for coming in, for engaging with us. Continue to do so. It's been a pleasure to moderate this discussion. Everybody stay well and stay healthy.
Thank you once again for inviting, and hello to everyone. I hope some answers, but let's be in touch. Thank you very much.